Vercel is the platform for front-end developers, providing the speed and reliability innovators need to create at the moment of inspiration. Founded by the creators of Next.js, Vercel has zero configuration support for 35 plus front-end frameworks, including SvelteKit. We enable the world's largest brands like Under Armour, eBay, and Nintendo to iterate faster and create quality software. Try out Vercel today to experience the easiest way to use Svelte.
Hey, it's another episode of Svelte Radio. We're back. We've got the whole crew assembled this time, and we have a guest, so it's a full house on Svelte Radio today. Today we have Bert with us from Ashley Furniture Store, I think it's called, right?
What up?
Hello. Hey. And as always, the rest of the crew, Anthony, Sean, Brittany, what have you guys been up to lately?
Trying to be as lazy as possible.
Having Christmas. Having Christmas is
Yeah.
great fun.
Christmas, yeah. And
It's January, you're still having Christmas.
Sort of.
January or
Just,
Christmas
not
rolls into
working.
New Year's.
What about you, Bert? How's Christmas
go.
been for you?
It was super busy. I went to Chicago last week, and then I went to Milwaukee, and then I'm back here at work. So it was pretty eventful.
Yeah, so you're based in Florida? Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm based in Tampa, Florida, in Ybor City. It's like the cigar city. I actually love it here. It's kind of cool. There's like chickens that run across the street and stuff, and it's a pretty crazy place in Tampa, but I love it.
Right. Yeah.
That sounds
So
like Hawaii. Hawaii has chickens everywhere.
My mom visited, and she's like, I thought I was in Cuba for like a second.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's the only thing I know about Florida other than like that Miami is in Florida is the infamous Florida Man,
Oh yeah,
What?
which is like a meme.
I
Florida
want to
Man?
become the Florida Man programmer.
Why am I not familiar with this?
You have not heard about Florida Man?
I might know it after I see it, but it's not coming
No, so
to mind.
it's this meme kind of, I guess, where all the like crazy shit happens in Florida, and the headlines always starts with Florida Man does X.
Oh, okay.
So it's just like Florida Man.
Yeah.
Maybe a good working title for this podcast: Florida Man uses Svelte.
I quite like that, yeah.
That is actually very
Yeah,
good.
like
title.
that.
That's great.
Yeah. So we were originally going to go with building furniture, but that's much better. Florida
Yes.
Man uses Svelte. That's
It
perfect.
reminds me of those Onion articles, like Area Man does something.
Yeah. What I've heard, actually, the reason that there's so many Florida Man headlines, one, yeah, Florida does tend to attract some pretty wild characters, but also apparently Florida just was one of the earliest to digitize their mugshot records. And their arrest records. So when it was a slow news day, journalists could just go online and look for news articles, and usually it'd come from Florida, and usually there'd be something interesting that they could kind of throw up. So yeah, Bert, you're nodding. Do you know about this?
Yeah, no, I know about that. Yeah, and it's also the laws too. Is like it's very open. The arrest records are like total public domain. Anyone can use them. I will say too, though, is like so I moved here from Wisconsin. And like when I got here, I felt like I was getting like just a tad crazier. It's something about it, like always being summer here. There's like no season change at all, and it's just like you're like, this is a little bit weird. I don't know how to explain it.
Does that mean you have like a warm Christmas?
Well,
Yeah,
it was cold
this
there.
Christmas was,
I think
yeah,
he's
it was
lying
a little cold there
bit.
this Christmas. Yeah, I mean, this was like the first Christmas where I did have to turn on the heat though. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's usually, it's not like warm or like hot, but it's not cold usually.
That's crazy.
You have maybe 3 seasons,
It's
right?
just-
There's like summer is like just hot and rainy and muggy.
Yeah,
And
I'd
then
say it's
there's
just
2
like
that are
hot
like
and humid,
reasonable
and then
seasons.
not as humid hot.
Not as humid. Yeah.
It's just like humid or very humid. All right. So it sounds like I wouldn't really enjoy it in Florida, other than the weather, I suppose. but I guess that's part of the humidity. I don't know.
That
I'd
is
probably
part of the
enjoy it.
attraction of living in Florida. Yes.
Yeah.
What
All
about
right,
the
so-
oranges? That's a good attraction.
Enough about
Isn't
Florida.
it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry, what? Oranges?
Florida's
the oranges.
it's the orange
Isn't
state.
it like Florida famous for oranges?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
today I learned. I love that I know about Florida man, but not that oranges are apparently. All right.
Would you also want to know that? Okay, never mind.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oranges are responsible for securities laws for
Anyway.
determining whether something or not is a security that originated with oranges in Florida.
So our
Well, anyway,
oranges.
thanks for coming to the Florida
It's how we
podcast
test.
and listening.
Exactly.
See you next week.
So are oranges a commodity then, or are
It's like
they?
Mad Max,
They're
we trading them.
An export. Yeah.
It was commodity, but like I don't know. The how we test is the thing you want to look up, and
right.
somehow it's relevant
Oh,
to NFTs and crypto. So that's it's a very strange origin, but it comes from Florida.
Yeah. Well, that's nice.
That
But
reminded me that the Orange Bowl was last weekend in football, and I know no one on this podcast probably cares about football, but it was the Orange Bowl in Miami, Florida, and there were 2 orange teams playing in the Orange Bowl. So it was the orangest Orange Bowl of all time.
So
It's
I
stadium
actually
full of
have
orange people.
a fun fact about me, like that's akin to football. If you guys don't mind me sharing.
absolutely,
Go ahead.
So I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'll just go in my intro. I'm Bert. I'm a lead developer at Ashley Furniture, and I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. And my grandfather was actually the defensive coordinator in the first Super Bowl. And so,
my gosh.
like, I'm kind of like Wisconsin royalty in that way. Like,
That's a big deal.
My brother has like, yeah, like my family has like all this like memorabilia from the Super Bowl, stuff like that. And it was funny. My mom was like moving to Florida. She like moved like a few weeks ago. She's like, oh, do you want this like signed Bart Starr jersey? Oh, do you want like this signed Aaron? I was just like, we got so much of it. But yeah, it's that's kind of like
I
my family's
recognize that
legacy.
name.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that
It was,
the
Phil
Packers?
Bengtson.
Were they in the
Yep.
was
Wow.
the Packers? Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
I wish I knew more about American football.
It's
It
fun.
was funny when I was in Svelte Summit, me and Penguin, when we were on the train back, we were talking about soccer and like the difference between like football and soccer. It was pretty fun.
Yeah. Here we
I was
would
going to
call
say I don't know the
soccer
difference.
football.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm glad that Kev said American football because I don't understand. Well, I don't understand any football or soccer or anything. But
Yeah,
I was
same.
going to say football is a totally different thing.
So that was like my middle school
it similar
fun
to
fact.
rugby?
Whenever they like had you stand up. Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Assuming that rugby is what we think is rugby, I feel like American football is more akin to rugby.
And then you don't want to bring in
Okay.
Australian football.
Oh yeah,
Right,
Aussie rules,
yeah.
right? Aussie rules.
Canadian football too, right?
What is happening? Is this a football Florida podcast now?
We have just diverged.
Yeah. So
I don't have enough.
maybe
I don't have a good enough name for all the things on this podcast right now. Like no grouping name.
maybe we should
It's
actually
Florida,
talk
man.
about Svelte. You know. So
Maybe.
Bert, you're a Svelte man.
I am a Svelte man. I'm a Florida Svelte man.
So what's your story?
So basically, when I went to college in Wisconsin, I got a degree in computer science, and then I was just kind of like, I need to get out of Wisconsin. I want to get somewhere hotter, and I moved to Florida. And yeah, I just started working. Like, I originally wanted to be a video game developer, and then when I was in college, I took like a graphic design course that made you make a website, and I got like super into it. And then my first job out of college was as a web dev. I was working at like some small logistics company, and I like somehow I made my career off of converting old stacks to new stacks. So my first job, I converted their entire like website to like a Vue like SPA like spa, and after that was all done, I learned a lot. Well, I thought I learned a lot, and like one of my friends here was like, "Hey, you should come to Ashley Furniture. I think you'd be good at it. We're doing like a really similar project." And like to me, I'm like, this is cool. Like now I've like learned all my mistakes. I could come over and like I'm gonna make no mistakes this time.
That's usually how it goes, right?
And I've honestly, like, this project I'm working on, Ashley, it's been awesome. Like, I've learned so much because it's so cool to get an opportunity like that where you're like, all right, now I can do it right. And then you learn even more. So when I kind of got in, I wasn't really in charge of this project they were doing. So I kind of had to like prove myself, kind of like get going with it. And so one of the mistakes I knew from my first time converting over is like when you do a migration, like a lot of newer devs who are new to that kind of like job or doing that, they'll be like, all right, new thing. Like, I want this new technology, this new technology, this new technology, this new technology, and they'll automatically fix everything, right? Like, it's not even like I've developed because I'm using this new technology. But like, what you find is like, and it's like what you find is like you have to teach everyone that, and like, there's a lot of that going on. But I'll admit, I was kind of a Svelte hater at first. I was looking at Svelte,
really?
like, yeah.
So what were you into before Svelte?
I loved Vue. I really did love Vue. And so
that would be Vue 2, right?
Yeah, Vue 2. And I did not, the whole Vue 3 thing was kind of annoying.
Before you got the compilation API, is that what came in V3?
Well, yeah, the V3 Vue thing was kind of annoying because especially doing a project like that, I just taught my whole team Vue 2, right? I took a lot of risk doing that. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, forget all that.
The API changed.
I kind of get the Vue. Yeah, I kind of get the Vue thing, the Vue to Svelte thing, because when I saw the plans for Svelte 3, I was like, whoa, hang on, I like the kind of object export thing, and that's pretty neat and encapsulated.
Yeah.
But
and I'll say that, so I like got in, and it's like, you're just like, why are you guys using this new framework, right? Like, you don't have all this stuff, like, use React or Vue. Like, I kind of went to that like default thing. But then I started seeing my team use Svelte, and I started using it. I was like, this is sick. Like, the stuff you can do is insane. Like, it was super easy. And it's like, I had a team of mostly junior developers, and they were doing stuff that like would take like 2 years of React experience, Sheesh. And so I was like, all right, we're keeping that. So that's how I kind of got into Svelte, and I still really love Svelte. It's super cool. People probably heard me talk about that a lot. It's probably what this podcast is about. But yeah, that's my Svelte story.
Yep. That's pretty
Thanks,
neat.
Florida man.
So what I don't even know what Ashley Furniture does. What is Ashley? Like is it an e-commerce thing or?
So Ashley
It's
Furniture,
IKEA in America.
Gotcha.
So like our fun fact is we're the world's largest manufacturer of furniture. So basically how this project came about is like we're a furniture manufacturer first, and kind of our e-commerce side of our business was kind of like, it was kind of like a side project. But then when COVID happened, like a lot of businesses, they're like, oh wow, this e-commerce side's pretty good. Let's invest a lot in that side. And that's why like our project of like kind of revitalizing the whole e-commerce side is kind of our main thing now.
So hang on, they're bigger than IKEA.
Yes, I'm
Wow.
pretty sure. Yeah, they're a pretty big furniture company.
That's impressive. And that's without e-commerce, they're bigger than IKEA. Sorry, Kev, I know this hurts. I know this hurts you to the core, Kev, but we've got to go there.
I mean,
Well, I was so scared when I was
Ashley
in
is
I'd get like
everywhere.
mugged or something.
you would
They're just
probably
gonna
like
capture you.
like if you asked a random person here if they knew what Ashley Furniture is, like they would just stare with you. Like
Yeah, it's not that big in Europe. It's pretty big in America and Asia.
Yeah.
It's unknown in the UK. Like no one's ever mentioned it or said it or anything. It's crazy. A whole new
It's
market
interesting
for
though,
them.
like that they're big in the US and Asia, but not in Europe. You'd think they'd try to expand to Europe, but yeah.
I think we are. I don't know. I can't really speak for higher level business plans. I'm just on the website.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting thing, though, because IKEA is probably a competitor. They also use Svelte.
Yep.
So are like furniture stores like just jumping on the Svelte train?
Yeah, I don't know what's up.
We're taking over
Yeah,
industry
maybe
by
it's like
industry, right?
We're going
That's
from
the way.
data viz to furniture. That's the path.
Yeah.
So this is like one thing I kind of learned at this job too, is like if you like look at a lot of furniture sites too, it's like a lot of them like the e-commerce like offerings not that good too, and that's why we've been kind of like hammering on it, because that's why I kind of like this job, is like this is a huge opportunity to like make like a really cool website that not a lot of people have done before.
Yep.
So that's a question that I have. Are you using Svelte or SvelteKit, and how are you building these websites? How are you rendering them? What kind? Because you said you first did a Vue Spa website. So how are you using Svelte for Ashley?
That's a very good question. I'll say very complicatedly. So basically, how the project kind of started is we were going to do like a full conversion of the site. And that's another mistake I'd call out anytime you do those projects. Never do that. Like always just kind of like divide and conquer, ship a thesis like approach. So we kind of like a few months ago, we're kind of like, let's step back and let's kind of take it piece by piece. So it's a lot of moving parts. So right now, if you go to like the Ashley Furniture homepage, it's actually all Svelte, where I built like a Vite config that builds everything to web components, right? So that was kind of our way, because the code base is kind of a mess right now. There's a lot of things. That was kind of our way of like getting some Svelte in there and like not having it affect anything else, not having it affect things in it. We're also like working on like SvelteKit instances where our CDN on like certain links will point to a SvelteKit server. And that's kind of how we're tackling it now. I also, in our Vite config, we had it so you could have like client-side routing for things like dialogues, like modals, and like tooltips, stuff like that. And that's like in my experience, like how you hit this is like you want to like move to a new stack. It's just like, just take like one little thing and just divide and conquer and take every little piece. And it's like, soon enough, you'll just find like, oh, we can just replace the whole thing.
Yeah.
So do you have a micro front ends or a micro sites approach? It sounds like micro sites.
Yes, microsites. And I will admit that might be an offensive thought. I am a micro front ends hater.
Well, I think there are a lot of those out there.
Yeah, I mean, it can get convoluted, but when you said web components, so your homepage is just one page that's using web components, and you're compiling the Svelte to the web components.
Yep. It's pretty complicated, actually. Yeah, I would say it's not an ideal state right now, right? And that's when you're doing these kind of conversions. I always say you shouldn't have like an in-between state that's terrible, that's unworkable, because sometimes you might just end up with that. But even now, it's just kind of, it's not ideal, but like we're getting there. And we have like a new footer in there that's completely Svelte. Like all the homepage ads are Svelte, and it's pretty cool. And it's just, we're still working on there. Still a lot of improvement. We're still like teaching the team, but it's cool stuff. And it's kind of, we kind of hit that point where it's like, you know, when you get there, it's like, all right, I have to build the Vite config, right? That builds out. I have to test that. I have to get that in there, right? And then finally we have Svelte in. Like now we finally hit that point where it's like we're getting Svelte like in there just constantly and just hammering it out.
It's exciting. Must be nice to like convert stuff. So I guess that happens a lot. You convert bit by bit, and then ship it. Like, can you see like a marked improvement in like lines of code, like the complexity of everything?
Yes. Oh yes. Oh yeah. yes. So like the site now is
What's
like
it
most of the
migrating
stack
from,
is like jQuery. Yeah, it's a jQuery. It's yeah. It's pretty bad.
So just going back to what you said about micro front ends versus micro
sites.
What we're talking about
Sites,
there. Micro sites, micro front ends. I understand that there's different views on what a micro front end is, and actually one of them, which is the one that we use, is a lot like micro sites because it's just multiple apps that join together kind of thing.
And to me, I would argue that's true micro front end is like a micro site, because I always kind of put it like this is like, you know, a microservice is an API that serves up like JSON or data, right? It doesn't serve up parts of that data. I mean, sometimes it does, but like, you know, like you get like a full JSON file, right? And like an HTML server serves a whole HTML file, not like a half of one, stuff like that.
Yeah. So essentially like it's, because you can also do like where you render like one unit of this site, one sidebar renders from one entire service. And I think that in theory sounds nice and isolated, but actually sounds like a nightmare to actually make.
That's what we did at Granger.
And so that was like our debate when I got here too.
We had like our shell in Svelte and SvelteKit, and then we had like, there would be a React component in certain parts. Then there would be like jQuery, Hybris, like stuff on the page still, and it was very convoluted and hard to deal with.
Yeah, so at my job when I first got in, it was like a huge debate on whether we should do micro front ends or micro sites or just like a one monolith SvelteKit. And I actually wrote up like a pretty cool like compiler that was like an API that would like compile your Svelte component for SSR, would SSR it, and then it would give you like the manifest so you could have like the hydration bundle for it. And it's like all those kind of things, like you do it, you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's like a cool little test, but it's like, I do not want to put that in production. Like that needs so much more work. And I was kind of telling the guys that, I'm like, just think about SvelteKit. That's taken a lot of work to get out there, right? What we're doing is pretty similar to that. And to get to that level, we're going to need to do a similar amount of work.
Right. So I wanted to go back.
Yeah, I mean,
so you mentioned.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Anthony.
I was just going to agree, basically saying, yeah, it takes a lot of effort, and I think that the DX is actually pretty important. Obviously, the user's experience is really important, but the DX is actually equally as valuable.
But
in some
the
instances,
developer-
because you make
I mean,
it hard
that's-
to work on, you can't deliver.
That's always like one of my developer it's like one of my like, developer tips thing. I always say, never write your own framework unless it's open source. Like if you're going to write a framework, make it open source. Because on my first job, I kind of accidentally did that. I wrote like an insane Webpack config to do all this weird compiling. And what happened was no one understood it. No one helped me out with it. And basically all my job was just maintaining that one thing. And I hated it. It was terrible.
It's good. It's a lesson. It's a lesson that you learn once, right?
Yep.
Leave it to someone else.
Yeah. Or at least be in a group that helps and works on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've always said that the developer experience leads to better user experience too. So if you have a better developer experience, I think that it can help create those better user experiences. It gives you more time to focus on that.
yeah, that's probably very true. Yeah. Like you can
Yeah, and
actually
they get features
focus on-
faster.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I'm huge on the DX thing too, because I think what a lot of devs kind of forget is when they're doing stuff like that, they're kind of like, oh, like everyone will understand this like immediately. Like so I learned my first job, I made that whole framework. I was like, it's so easy. You can have Vue, it's gonna be, and then we just basically went back to coding the same stuff we were before, but in a flavor of Vue. And I kind of just sat there. I was like, wow, I should have just made this way easier to understand. And then people could have focused on, the important things like code quality, stuff like that. They're too busy on getting it set up, dealing with like certain problems. So yeah, I'm huge on DX, and yeah.
Yeah, it kind of feels like everyone in the Svelte community is very, like, really trying to push DX.
Yep.
As a thing, and it's because we've experienced a very nice
Yes.
framework that we like to work with, right?
Yeah.
So we want to push that even further if we can. So you mentioned earlier you did some kind of routing for modals and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one of those things that is you're almost always going to need those in a website. So to me, I think SvelteKit should implement a solution for modals that also work server-side rendered. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how that would look, but it would
You
be
want
very
Svelte
nice.
to have a component library?
No, I want Svelte to handle modal routing, I guess, is what I'm saying. So you can do that
Modal routing.
How would
manually.
it do that?
You can do it right now.
Layouts.
It's just like, yeah, you have to use a bunch of layouts and like, what's it called? Like the spread parameter thing. It's like
Pass
it
'em.
gets very hairy very quickly, especially if you have to juggle multiple modals. Like if you have one modal and then that opens another modal or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things that I think could be a lot better in general in web dev, probably. Because I don't think there are actually frameworks that handle it properly.
I think it's one of those major bugbears for me that I don't like modals as a whole. I find them to be generally a bad experience, especially when you've got an SPA, because you can change pages faster. You can fire up a modal. There's not really any point. They feel like a hangover from server rendered apps where you need to load a new view without actually changing page.
Yep.
Having said that, sometimes they do provide a good experience, such as login where you don't want the user to feel like they've left the page and they just see this box where they log in and then everything's all authenticated. But the thing that I find interesting about that is that the web now has its own native component for modals, which doesn't solve any of the problems with making modals anyway, but at least it's native, and it means that it works server-side, and it also means that, at least I think it works server-side, but it essentially means that you can render it, you can skin it however you want, and you can have this real modal component, which is what we use now.
Yeah.
But routing I hadn't thought about because I don't tend to use it for routing, but it's an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, I implemented like a very, very bare bones thing for like the starter kit that I was working on a while back. And it's just like it's very messy. And it's something that you'd want built into the framework to make the server side component work properly, I guess. So,
I think it's a cool idea. I agree with you, Kev. I also agree with Anthony. Like, I really think it'd be cool if you could route it, but like my whole thing is like if a modal is more than a yes and a no, and like a little brief text, like you need a page, not a modal. I think nowadays with like CSR and stuff like that, like it's so quick, like you don't need a modal anymore. It's just go to the page. Like I had the same thing. At Ashley, we had like a little quick view modal to like show the product page from the like product. I'm saying a bunch of industry terms, sorry, like the PLP. So like the product listing page. And it was like a little quick view to bring up that same thing as a PDP. And I was like, just when they click it, take them to PDP. It's actually quicker.
Yeah.
Like especially as SvelteKit.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
mean,
also tough because we use file system routing.
Yeah, so that's probably why it is kind of rough to make it work as on the server. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of agree with you as well. Like you wouldn't want to put like massive functionality in a modal, but it's nice for like quickly entering new data or whatever. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of like what a good use case for a modal is, like a confirmation box or like I can't think of a good one anymore.
The only one I like is login. That's the only one I like because it is sometimes good when a user's browsing your site anonymously and they want to switch to be authenticated in their account and stuff, but you need to be logged in. You don't want to really change the page and say you've lost your, like you're not going to lose their context, but it might feel like they've lost their context.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's any time you don't want the user to lose the context of where they are or the state of where they are, I guess. So maybe you're in, I don't know, like maybe you want to enter a new product into a list or something, and you have a bunch of other things open. I don't know.
One of the things I always get concerned about in modals too is like accessibility. You know, like how do I tell the user we're gonna put something in front of them? And it seems pretty straightforward, but like I've done them before. It's like the ARIA rules for them are not straightforward at all, and there's like a ton of different semantic tags and stuff. And I always go like, what's like what do they recommend here? Because I made a modal the other day, and I thought you do like the ARIA has pop up, but apparently it didn't for this one. And I was like, okay, but why?
It's very convoluted.
That's what I always get concerned about. Yeah.
It's one of the hardest ones to get right. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of foot guns.
Whenever this topic comes up, I always share a gist from Ryan Florence. He wrote this, I think, 7 years ago on why modals are hard. And so if anyone's interested in routing and modals, check out the show notes.
I'm definitely going to check that out.
Ryan Florence is the creator of React Router and now Remix.
Yeah.
And big into accessibility. But I don't think it's not just ARIA labels, because that's mostly for screen reader stuff.
Yeah.
But apparently also like focus trapping.
Yep. Yeah. I always mess that up. Yeah. Because I know you're supposed to, like, when you open a modal, you're supposed to, like, focus, like, the first, like, interactable element on it, I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I always mess that up.
And then also when you close the modal, it needs to go back to where you started.
To the previous one. So you need some kind of, like, focus trap history store of some kind that just, like, sets the correct... Oh, yeah.
Where I mostly mess up, too, is you're not supposed to be able to focus the things behind it. And it's like, it's hard.
Yeah, front end is
I think
hard.
there've been new developments in the web platform where you can just kind of declare that it's a modal, and then it prevents everything else from being focused on while the modal is active.
That's nice.
Is that the dialogue element?
Dialogue element. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
the native dialogue component or element,
Yeah.
HTML
Yeah.
element, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what I was talking about before when I was saying you could wrap something. You can wrap the dialog element and it basically replaces all needs to have any sort of modal library. But it has that flag like attribute thing where you can set it to be an actual modal and it'll block out the background and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I clearly haven't used it, but I've read about it.
Yeah. It's like weird. I've like
It's
seen
pretty
it. I tried to use it and it just, I don't know, maybe it just didn't go my way. I know the documentation's just not that up to date for it yet either.
Yeah.
If you inquire on the Beyonc site, that uses our modal, which is a dialog element. It works pretty well.
It's also a pretty new feature as well. Like I think it only recently got a
What's the support like on
I
it?
think it recently got like a full support.
Did it?
It's green across the board.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But then there are like features of the dialogue element as well that I'm not entirely sure if it's. No, it looks like it's all supported now. That's nice. Before we continue with the episode, here's a word from our sponsor, Vercel.
Vercel is the platform for front-end developers, providing the speed and reliability innovators need to create at the moment of inspiration. Founded by the creators of Next.js, Vercel has zero configuration support for 35-plus front-end frameworks, including SvelteKit. We enable the world's largest brands like Under Armour, eBay, and Nintendo to iterate faster and create quality software. Try out Vercel today to experience the easiest way to use Svelte.
Well, I always mess up too when you have like a nav bar, when you have like a menu and it opens to the right. Like I always go like, do I make that a dialogue? Is that technically a modal? Because it's in front, right? And if you hit the
Right.
side, it closes.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of situations like that.
It's almost like everything is getting shoehorned into the web platform that was just originally made to display text and maybe a few images. It's kind of funny.
I mean, I think that's a good thing.
I will say though, once you get working, it's so satisfying. Like we were working on like a mattress quiz at Ashley, and I have it as like you like step through it, and each one focuses like the first element, and it like goes through, and then you can add the answers. It's oof, and that's one of the things I like about SvelteKit. Like doing stuff like that, it's so easy.
Yeah. It's very, very satisfying when you get things like autofocus and multi-step forms and all that cool jazz wired up correctly.
If you're interested in like those components too and things that are using native HTML elements and being accessible, OpenUI is a project that's like creating like open source components that can be used across the web, and they have a dialogue also.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So I mean, I'm gonna recommend. I always love the accessibility guidelines. They have like brand new ones, and I like how they kind of switch it up from like a more legal kind of like here's what it needs to like a recipe book where it's like here's how you make an accessible modal, here's how you make an accessible tabs component. I've been using that, and that's been pretty helpful for me in my accessibility learning journey.
So is that the accessibilityproject.com?
Yeah, I think it's here. I'll look it up real quick.
No stress. Let's see. Yeah, so this turned into a discussion about modals and accessibility, which is always fun.
Oh, I was like gonna dive in when he started talking about the different things on the site and all the components. I'm like, do we have a design system? Can we like expand on like how you're doing? I could just talk about this for hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember one of the podcasts I was listening to, you were talking about Svelte with Storybook, and I was sitting there in my car listening to it. I'm like, yeah, I know the problems with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're getting more support, but it's
it's
all
good-
community driven. So
Yeah. It's gotten a lot better.
Storybook is doing some kind of refactor, so they actually are adopting Vite, which was the main holdup, I think.
Yep.
Because I didn't want to maintain two different configurations. I don't think it's done yet.
yeah, I think it has Vite support. Storybook under the hood will still use Webpack as far as I understood it, but you will only have one config in your project.
That sounds wild from an implementation.
So when I was doing that stream, it was like Storybook would use Webpack and you would have to configure your Vite config to work with Webpack and go into the Webpack config and configure Vite. It was like this inception of config, and it was not
Yeah, no
not
thanks.
fun.
Yeah. And I mean, I had the same thing. I know that Vite Builder is a little bit better now and actually like builds your Svelte components using Vite, but we had problems where it's like a component would work in Webpack but not in Vite, and like vice versa, and that caused like a ton of problems.
Yeah, I
Sounds about
started
right.
using ViteBook for a while, and it's really good, but it's unfortunately abandoned now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are a bunch of different projects, right? You have Histoire is another one, I think. And then there's, is that Scott Tolinsky's one?
VBook.
Is that
Bookit.
Is Bookit.
It's Bookit, but it's Bookit. I can never say it right because it's spelt with the capital K. It's Bookit.
Oh, yeah, okay. I always thought it was Bookit.
Yeah, we just need to standardize.
It is
On
Bookit,
these
but
things.
it's just spelled Bookit.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The last I looked
Yeah.
at Bookit, it wasn't documented yet, but he hasn't released it fully, so it's
I think a lot of things he builds are internal for his site, and then he gets done with what he needs to do.
Yeah, yeah. So I've tried using Histoire, and that seems pretty nice. It's got Vue and Svelte support.
And I think Storybook is seeing the light a little bit with the Vite, like you said, that they're trying to implement that as more of a native thing, but it being community driven, that's a really small team that works there. I think they only have like 40 to 50 people at Storybook.
I'm pretty sure the newest version, like the next major version, is gonna have like first class support for Vite too. Like, so I don't know. I've tried it a little bit and it seemed a lot better, but we'll see once it gets to like like a stable release.
Yeah. So Bert, you're famous for your talks, your Svelte Summit talks. That's how you showed up on my radar, at least. Your first talk at Svelte Summit, was it? It's not last year. It's like
Spring of last
was
year.
it spring? Oh yeah, you did talks for both, right? Yeah. So that talk was very interesting. You did I don't even know how you would describe it. Like
It's WWE.
yeah, no. That's the later one, right? So
Both of them kind of like, you have the rock star like vibe going.
sure.
But you
yeah,
did the
yeah.
green screen with the chair cut out. That was the first one, right? Where you kept your chair in the green screen, like an 80s style retro. Yeah.
It's very, very entertaining, and it's always fun and exciting to see talks that are done in such a different way compared to like you. So I'm not like complaining about the regular talks. I like the regular talks as well, but they're mostly the same. It's just like some person explaining a topic, like showing something. But this one is just like, it's just out there, very, very eye-catching and entertaining. So how did you end up like coming up with this idea?
Oh, no, and I just want to say, like, your guys' support I was literally crying after I was done with it because I had no idea how that was going to go. And it's like the support from the community on those has been like so cool. So like how it came about, I always wanted to do a talk at a tech conference. That was like always one of my goals. And I mean, I'm a team lead. I was trying to be like a good example. So I was like, I'm just going to submit to Svelte Summit, not expecting to get in, but this is what you guys should do, right? And then all of a sudden I got an email like next week, like, your talk's in. I was like, my heart sank. I was like, oh crap. Like now I need to like, really work, get this talk done. So
Now you have to do it.
And so one of my, in college, I actually like programming. I was like a major in computer science, but like my main passion was like graphic design. And I was in like a meme group on campus where we'd just like hang out and make jokes and make funny videos like that. And so for this talk, I was like, oh, it's going to be like serious. This is going to be a serious talk where I did serious. And I was recording it. I was like, this just isn't working. Like, this isn't me. This is not how I do things. And I was like, I'm just going to be myself. Like, I'm going to make it goofy. I'm going to do it how I've always done videos before. And, I'm going to try my best. If they don't like it, that's fine. I was, probably won't have another talk, but like, I'll go for it. And so, like, when my talk was coming up, like the one before, I think it was like penguins, like it was so nice, so well done, like very informative. I'm like, oh my God, like mine is so goofy. I was like, my heart was like beating. I was like super nervous. And it like played, and it's like the support, like everyone was like, "Whoa, that was like super cool." I was like, "Oh, it's like thank God!" Like, and I mean, that's something I always try to do is like, I give people information, but give it to them like a fun way, like kind of like a Bill Nye type situation. So that was kind of my goal with it, and I mean, it's really cool that like everyone. I just kind of like put myself out there, and the whole Svelte community was kind of like, "That's cool, dude."
Yeah, it's
well,
it's very...
like Penguin's talk, yours was different, and I think, sorry, and I think being different. I think being different is a really good differentiator. I think that making a talk that's very different to other talks is a great way to get noticed, is memorable, and it's a bit of fun because everything was really sensible and straight on. Then very formal and well planned. It can get a bit kind of like samey, so I think it's great.
It's dry,
and I didn't realize it was your first talk. It's amazing.
You add that entertainment value and keep the educational part, but like an entertainer too.
I think a lot of people could probably learn from both of your talks. And I remember in the Discord after, so this was the spring talk, the chair and the green screen one. Like I remember you said that it took you a very long time to make the edits work, even though so for those who's just listening, I urge you to go watch the talks. They're in the show notes. But like the to give a recap, it's kind of like made in this 80s, and it kind of looks like it's badly done, but it's not done badly, if that makes sense. If you get my what I'm after. It was
intentional badness.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's like you must have spent so much time like making the edits, like
I always get over ambitious too. So like whenever I'm like talking about like, especially like a tech thing, is like I gotta use what I'm talking about if I think it's so great. So like all my talks, like all the slides are done in like SvelteKit, stuff like that. Like all the edits were done in SvelteKit, and that's what took like a majority of time. Like in my first talk, there's that one where like all of the frameworks and stuff were like spinning around me. Getting that to work took so long, and it like only worked on Firefox. So I had to like open Firefox, like set it up with the green screen, and then take it.
I didn't realize you'd done it in like everything in SvelteKit, like even I thought it was just edited, like just make
so I all the backgrounds were in SvelteKit, right? And so I would like record my screen, and then I'd record me, and then I'd like put the SvelteKit instance on the background in Adobe. Yep. So it was a little bit edited, but like all of like the graphics were SvelteKit.
Yep. Huh. That is.
I think everybody who does a talk on Svelte writes their own framework. every single person.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it.
And I mean, SvelteKit was like awesome for it, because literally I just had it like click, like route to next page, click, route to next page. Like it was pretty nice. It worked pretty well for it.
Yeah, well,
so you use the file system based router as like a slideshow where you clicked through to the next route, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, I have it on my GitHub if people want to check it out. If BirdieBot is my GitHub name.
BirdieBot?
Oh, amazing.
BirdieBot. I can't spell.
And I love how your second talk, you called out like some of your worst Svelte code you've ever written. It was just so great to see like some of the mistakes, like things you should never do.
Yeah. Well, to me, that's like always how I've learned. I'm definitely like a learn from your mistakes kind of person. And like, especially in Svelte, like what I'll do too when I'm learning is like, I think I showed the one where I was trying to get like web component styling to working. And I'll be like, wow, this is like a bad practice, but let me see how far I can go down into this rabbit hole and just push the button on it, and like how bad of code I can make and see if it still works. And usually you learn like a lot about the framework that way. Like you learn how little things, like little intricacies work. So that was kind of why I did that talk too. I wanted to like show people, who's like, here's some like quirky things you can do. And it kind of lets you know a little bit about what's happening behind the scenes.
That's actually not something I've ever done, like intentionally try to write bad code. Kind of sounds like definitely like a learning experience. Yeah. All right. You did like a small feature for the SvelteKit create CLI, right?
Yeah. So one of my goals for last year is I'm a contributor on Svelte because I've been updating the docs. So anytime there's a dead link, I'd update it. But I always wanted to be a contributor on SvelteKit, and I wanted like an actual feature, that I wrote that was like actual code. So me and my coworker, I'll shout out my coworker Obi, we got really into vitest. If you haven't used it with Svelte, use it. It's awesome. I love vitest so much. And it's funny, as we were building it, there wasn't many docs for it, and so we were like updating like the Svelte testing library docs. We were updating all these other docs, and I noticed in the SvelteKit discussion board there was like a lot of people were like, "How do you get vitest to work with SvelteKit?" And I was kind of in there. I was like checking it. I'm like, this would be a good thing for the Svelte Creative. You could just add vitest to it automatically. I've worked with those kind of scripts before. It doesn't seem that hard. And I also want to shout out Davey Pond. He's on GitHub. He also did like a ton of work. If you see him on Twitter, he does really cool stuff with vitest. So I was like, all right, I like went to the Svelte create, like got the repo, and I just had a thing where it's when you create a new project, you'd say, hey, do I want vitest? Yes, add it, and you'll have a new SvelteKit project with vitest. And I also want to shout out Ben McCann, because he also made that PR like 10 times cooler by adding a test for the Wordle game, which I thought was like super sick. Like, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Ben McCann is the GOAT.
He is everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, oh, it seems like just like a dumb, stupid feature. Like, some people might like it. It was not that much code. It wasn't really that intricate, but I put it out. I just put on Twitter like, hey, I'm finally a SvelteKit contributor. And like a lot of people are like, oh, like, thanks. Like, thanks a ton. And it felt awesome. It was really cool.
Yeah. More people should contribute in general, I think.
I feel like the CLI is one of the greatest features of Svelte too, and being able to get those things out of the box and have a recommended tool that is good for that out of the box is really nice.
Yeah, because you're gonna need like a bunch of this stuff.
Yeah, and I'll say like I come from the C# world a lot too, and like unit testing in C# is like awesome. There's like a ton of cool features, cool stuff. Like I love unit testing, but I'm more of a front-end dev now, and I do a lot of JavaScript, and I've always been like, the unit testing just sucks. It's terrible. It's like, it's really hard to work with. It's a lot more, like, to me, unit tests should just be easy, right? So you don't have to think about them, just make them, it works. And I never really like Jest, especially with Svelte. Like, I converted HighGraph's rich text renderer from React to Svelte, and I was using the Jest test for it, and it was just randomly breaking at points. And I'm like, you can't have a good unit test if it randomly breaks, doesn't work. And so I went to vitest, and it's one of those things. It's so cool. It's just like you plug it in, and it like works, and it just literally automatically makes your code like 10 times better.
What does it do differently?
So I'd say like the big thing with like Svelte is like you just need to build a V. I always think you should build a V, and vitest is just kind of like Jest but with V, so it's a lot quicker. I'll also say I like the config for it is a lot simpler than Jest. Uses ESM modules too, which makes things a lot easier. I know Jest has ESM modules, but it's like some experimental. And again, like it just randomly broke. And to me, it's like a unit testing framework is completely like you can't even use it if it will randomly break on one test. That's not a real break, then you can never trust your code. And so like I'd say like one of my big things is like the technologies I love in the front end are ones that just work. And like vitest, Vite, and like Svelte, like those are like those three. Like you can just, and PMPM too, like you can just plug those in and they just work like straight out. Like, and it just literally makes your dev experience like 10 times better.
Agreed. PMPM is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I always put this joke on Twitter. It's like, I'm a simple man. I see a project in NPM. I migrate to PMPM.
That's great. All right, cool. So I thought we could, so there was recently, so for the other host, like any other questions for Bert before we move on? There's another topic that I wanted to discuss a bit as well.
No, I just recommend watching the talks. I thought they were really well done. So good job leading by example there. And right. I've actually said that I think Bert is just, I don't think he talks about it much, but you also have a prior history of being a gamer, right? Like a competitive gamer.
Oh yeah. I kind of tell that story about Svelte Summit is like I was super nervous going into it because I'm used to video game tournaments. I used to play Super Smash Brothers, and I kind of showed it off for my Svelte talk. I have a tattoo of Captain Falcon, who is my main on it. And it was like, those are like the conferences I was used to. And like the Smash community is great. Like everyone's very welcoming, but when you go to them, it's kind of like, oh, I got to prove myself, right? Like I got to play these games. And it's like kind of what I love about fighting games is like that pressure, you know, like it's very fun. It's very like exhilarating, but like I was so nervous going into this Svelte Summit. It's like, oh, I got to prove myself because that's like what I was used to. And one of the things, my cleaning robot just went off. So one of the things I just like loved about the Svelte community at Svelte Summit was just how cool that community was, how welcome they were, because like that pressure just alleviated immediately. And I was like, oh, I gotta prove myself here. It's just fun to talk and like learn things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I only bring it up also because I think you just come with some inherent energy and enthusiasm that makes you come across really well when you speak. So I hope to encourage you to do it more often in this year because you're good.
Oh, dude, that means so much coming from you. Thank you.
You should definitely apply to more like broader conferences, I think, like JSConf, for example, or other.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to try it out. It's like, I just love what I do, and I kind of just get caught up. And it's like, it's like if I get an idea, I just do it. And like, I really loved Svelte, and I was like, I know a good talk for Svelte, and I just kind of like did it. I'm like kind of impulsive on that, but I definitely would like to try. It's just, I need that idea.
I have the perfect conference for you. You're from Wisconsin, and we talked about it last week. That conference just opened up their CFP for their Wisconsin conference coming this summer. So that would be amazing for you. They also use Svelte on their homepage. So, well, on their site.
Perfect fit.
Yeah.
I'll give it a look.
And I have an in. So if you apply, let me know, and I will talk to Clark.
You could also do that same talk in other conferences because it's a bit like theater. Like, you know, it's fun seeing it recorded, but seeing it live is a whole different experience.
Yeah.
Doing it live is crazy. I was so nervous.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was funny after the talk, everyone was like, oh, weren't you nervous doing that? I was like, you didn't see me run laps back and forth? Like, that's how I got the energy out.
Yeah. It was great. It was great. Like everyone should go watch it. But yeah, all right. So
Agreed.
The topic I wanted to discuss so there was a post on Reddit, the JavaScript subreddit, about the Vue.js 2022 year in review. And like there's a lot of discussion about the transition from Vue 2 to Vue 3. And I don't know much about Vue, but it seemed like there was a lot of frustration because there are apparently a lot of different ways that you can do the same thing. And tutorials everywhere showing all these different ways of doing things. And I thought maybe that's something that we can learn from as a community, and even as the maintainers of Svelte, like they should probably take a look at this and like understand why the confusion is there and what to do and what not to do, and probably, I'm not sure.
Was it similar to like going from component object-based to classes? That's the word I was looking for. Classes to hooks in React. What was the change?
Maybe Bert, maybe you'd know more about this.
Dude, it's been a while since I coded in Vue. Yeah. I always tell people like I'm like a fighting game solo main. Like I just pick one framework and I stick with it. But I just remember my main frustration was like, all right, I taught my entire team Vue 2. We converted everything over to Vue 2, and now it's like you're getting stuff. Oh, you can't use it unless you're using Vue 3. Oh, you can't use it unless you're using Vue 3. And like one of the things I value as a developer, especially as you get like more senior, is like if it works, like that's the most valuable thing, right? Like I know we want to make things faster and better and stuff like that, but like changing something that works is an inherent risk. And like for Vue 2 to Vue 3, like having to update the whole code base again, that's so risky. And so like a lot of people are just trapped in Vue 2, but then you're seeing these new toys that are Vue 3 and you're like, why did they do this? It's a ton of frustration.
There was no easy migration command, so that was something that SvelteKit provided when there was a big breaking change. They had a migration path that at least helped that along.
I think there was like a little bit, but it wasn't like foolproof. It's been a while, so sorry.
Yeah. So I just thought that, like, I read the thread and it kind of just felt like a lot of frustration from developers and mainly I think the thing that stood out to me is there was a lot of people talking about, I think I mentioned it already, but like you can do the same thing, but in like 4 different ways, which just confuses people a lot. And you see especially for beginners, they see one tutorial showing one way of doing it, and then they see another tutorial showing it in the second way, and then a third one in the third way. And then you've got this mix of all these different things that you kind of have to learn to understand new code bases and what works for your code base.
The other problem was that Next wasn't supporting Vue 3 either, so they had no way to make like a full framework application with it either. So Next 2 was the only way that they could like create an application framework.
Yeah, that's interesting because maybe it makes sense to always keep Svelte, the major versions of Svelte and SvelteKit in sync. So whenever Svelte 4 releases, you would release
I think that's going to happen too, because SvelteKit's now the recommended way to create any kind of Svelte app. So I think that by default, they're going to be kind of intertwined.
Yeah. I guess we could ask our maintainer.
We even supported Vite 4 like a couple days after it was released, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Anthony, maybe you know something about this topic. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I have more information than you do right now, to be honest. I haven't been following the discussion.
I know the big thing with Vue 2 is like the main component library, Vuetify, was like, I think it literally just got to Vue 3 like a few months ago. And I know like that was like really popular. A lot of people at Vue use that. And it's kind of just like, when you're stuck and all that's stuck in Vue 2, you just got to deal with it.
Right. You can't upgrade, right? Because you're the design library that you're using is stuck on version 2. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it was just like an interesting thread, I thought. I think we can learn from it.
And I mean, this is just my kind of opinion too. Like I don't like breaking changes. Like you should try to avoid them wherever possible. And I think it is possible to avoid them. I can't speak from making a framework standpoint, but like just updating things like a little bit one at a time, and getting people there, right? Instead of just updating all at once and being like, all right, all your stuff's old now and broken and you should feel bad. Like, I feel like that's the frustration like a lot of like devs who aren't in this space feel. And I totally get it, because I got the same thing. I was like, oh, I just converted my whole code base to Vue 2. And now like literally like the second I'm done, it's old and crappy and I can't, like I have to upgrade. It's just frustrating.
I did.
I think that breaking changes, you do end up making them, because if you don't make them, then you end up with the kind of the alternative, which is potentially worse, which is something along the lines of create class and class based components in React, or hooks and the old way of doing things. I can't remember what that was, but you end up with 2 ways of doing the same thing, and you end up with mixed documentation, things getting out of date, things that are still relevant. That when I first came to React, I looked at how to start just doing it. This was way back in the past, and there was so many different ways to do the same thing, and I didn't know which was the right one. I didn't want to start building something because it'd be out of date. And so at least having versions of saying, well, Vue 2 does this and Vue 3 does this and SvelteKit does
That's
this
still
and
a problem in
Sapper
React.
does this, and exactly, because they have to kind of maintain this never-ending backwards compatibility. And there's other places where that's done, such as Java. Java have maintained the endless backward compatibility, and it just makes life hard, as having benefits and disadvantages, but it makes life for me harder, and I'd rather people just major version thing.
Yep.
You can support it for a time, and then you have a breaking change, or you have no progress. So if you find an API that works better and you do that breaking change, like you can give your users time to migrate over and tell them that it's going to be deprecated and it's going to be going away in the future, but that this is the path forward and it's better.
Yeah.
And it's a clear boundary. You say this is version 3, this is version 2, and it's very obvious which is the newer, which is the older.
And that's what that blog post goes into, is that Evan is looking to get on a more release schedule and to use Semver and like do the correct like patching and versioning.
I think one of the things too is just like getting the supporting libraries on board too, because I think, like I said, that was a lot of the frustration you brought up, Brittany, is like, yeah, Nuxt wasn't Vue 3 yet, Vuetify wasn't 3 yet, and they're just kind of like left out to dry on those. And I find like a lot of people find that frustrating too, where it's like, all right, like all these libraries that I've built my code around are just, I can't update to the newest and greatest things.
And it's not something that we do particularly well either, because
Yeah.
How many libraries do you use with Svelte? That's one of my things, is like every other framework that I've used, you have to pull in all these other libraries. But with Svelte, I don't feel like I have that need to go out and reach for libraries. So a lot of times it's just like code that you have to go and update, but not like other libraries and wait on them.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I also think that's one of the good things about Svelte that would help you avoid this, is that it's like a compiler, right? And I know like a lot of compilers, they have like migration versions, right, that will be interoperable with the new version and the old version, so help people like convert over. It's like Vue, like with Vue 3, it's like that's just your code. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Whereas like Svelte, you kind of have more options due to the compiler. I don't know if you do that, but that's how I've seen like other compilers do it.
Yeah, that's true. Your compiler version will always work with it.
Isn't Vue 3 a compiled based language now? Didn't they make that switch?
So, some parts of it. Some parts of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the template that is compiled, and then the rest is not. I'm not a Vue expert, so I wouldn't know.
I have no idea.
Okay. That's what I read in the thread.
I just saw someone tweeting about it the other day.
All right.
Yeah, there's a blog post on it on the Vue site, I think, that talks about it. But it's just one part of it, and I think like you're right, it's the compiler. It's
the markup
supposed to do with
part,
templating, I think.
basically.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's the topic discussed. We're getting into the end of the show, but where we have two excellent and fun sections. We're starting off with unpopular opinions. Do you guys have any?
All right. I know people talk about this on the show a lot, but Tailwind. I know Evan brings it up, but I'm gonna be a little bit more unique with it. So lately, and this is probably like the intended way you code styles in Svelte, but lately I have been like not using any custom classes at all in Svelte, or like very rarely. I'll just use the semantic HTML and then also use like select by the ARIA label. And my coworkers have been like, this is kind of weird, but I like it. And it kind of brings in what I liked about Tailwind into like actual CSS. And so I know this is like a little bit of like, yeah, this is how you should code Svelte, but my coworkers think it's weird. But I've been like loving it lately. So like one of my examples is I think it was like a Twitter thread there talk about like how you style an active link. And I was like, oh, you could just select anchor tag ARIA current equals page, right? And that could be your selector. And everyone's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like you could do that. And I was like, I've been loving it lately, because it's like now people, when they see the CSS, they know immediately what that code's doing, what it's checking for, right?
You don't use Tailwind at all? You're using like a Tailwind-like philosophy?
So one of the things I like about Tailwind is, so my opinion is, most people are not good at coding CSS, and the people who are good at coding CSS have different opinions, And so like one of my frustrations is when I come into a new project, I'm looking at CSS, I have to like constantly reference the style sheets and be like, oh, what is this? Like people have different naming philosophies. And to me, that's what I really love about Tailwind, is like, you can just look at it and be like, yeah, it's ugly, but I know immediately what you're doing, what you're trying to get done, like what's, and if there's a problem, I can immediately see it and fix it. And I totally get like oh yeah, it's really ugly. Oh yeah, your like utility classes are huge. And so what I like about this kind of approach with Svelte, where it's like, if you have anchor tag ARIA current equals page, everyone knows like that's the active link, right? Like you just know more of this like custom class naming where we have to figure out, what everyone calls something, or you don't have to teach like a philosophy like BEM or something like that. It's just pretty built into the styling. It's semantic and makes sense.
It's opinionated. It's what you like
it.
about the Tailwind version. So it's a good opinionated baseline that keeps everybody kind of on the same page with styling, where if you have multiple people working on a code base, like it could get out of hand with like creating custom classes, and like you said, you'd have to cross. That was something I was going to bring up when we were talking about the CLI, is when are we going to get like some CSS things in there? Like, are they going to add Tailwind or like Sass options where we could just like have those integrated immediately with the CLI?
Yeah, I don't know. Like they seem pretty interested in keeping it separate. There's the Svelte
add,
yeah, that does most of that stuff, but it's something you have to know about.
That one is not updated. Well, it wasn't as of the last time I tried to use it for Tailwind. You have to make a couple of changes afterwards.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's worth bringing into the CLI somehow. I don't know, but like there's a downside to growing the CLI infinitely as well, right? You have to keep the configs up to date all the time, and things break, new versions are released. I don't know.
And I will say, I think Svelte's like the easiest thing to add Tailwind to. It's stupid easy. You just literally run that Svelte adder and it goes on, and it's great.
Yeah. There's also a big resistance to adding loads and loads of flags to the CLI and things like that, because it does increase the kind of very quick setup time. It does ask loads of questions that are probably irrelevant for 90% of people. And I think that it's fair to say that we avoided configuration for a long time for the same reason, that happy default should be the best, and then you're on your own. We've kind of changed the plan on that a little bit, because we found the community building all sorts of different configs that looked similar but operated differently, and we thought it was better if we had like a standard format, and Vite kind of helped us get that, because it's essentially a Vite config with a Svelte plugin config. But it's these decisions that, if we start making sort of adding Tailwind and stuff native, we're almost kind of blessing Tailwind and saying, hey, this is a great framework, you should use it. And no one's ever going to completely agree on that, for example.
But I was saying to give options, like we give TypeScript or JS stock, so like you could do multiple options there, but it doesn't matter.
You could, but then you're blessing all those options, right? And there might be other options that you're not, that you're not blessing. It's just that they're not blessed because they're not in the CLI. So it's always a toss up of, are we like effectively recommending something, and we don't necessarily recommend anything. A Svelte, Rich. I just said Svelte thinking Rich, but Rich would have you do everything raw, like, because it is often easy when you may not need all these things that you add in, and you just kind of, it's become the default. And I think that the moment you start adding all these options in, it's like, well, Svelte's saying we should use this and this and this, and it's just, it's a very hard path to come out of again.
And I'll agree with Anthony there, because I think one of my noob traps was using Tailwind with Svelte, because my component library, the first time I built it with Tailwind, and like I said, we got to this project where we're like, all right, we want to encapsulate everything in web components. With Tailwind, you can't do that, because it's all like a global CSS. And so like what I've started to really love about Svelte is like you can just have a component that's like completely encapsulated, like carries like all its styles. And one thing I really started to love about it is like I had to convert from Tailwind, and I put up a tweet about it where I was just running it. I was putting in the post CSS with the utility classes from Tailwind, and I was running it through Svelte preprocess, and it would just give me a clean CSS file that I could like start with and migrate it over, and it looks so ugly. But I don't know, it's such like a cool thing, and it's like that's one thing I really like appreciate doing that is like Svelte, you can write it in like something that people don't agree with, right? Like, I know there's like contention over Tailwind, but you could just have it compile and give it to someone as like pure, JS, CSS. They don't need to know what you did before.
Yep. All right.
Cool.
Brittany.
Oh, yeah. So we were talking about Ryan Florence earlier and mentioned Remix, and this will lead a little bit into my pick, but my pick is the Bytes newsletter. And in the newsletter this week, they're doing their 2023 picks, and it says Remix will go all in on web components. And I have a feeling this is because Shopify bought Remix, and they're working with Hydrogen now, and Hydrogen does a lot with web components, and I'm assuming that's why they picked this. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe not an unpopular opinion or relevant to this episode, but we did talk about Remix and web components quite a bit. So I don't think that that's going to happen. They did go framework agnostic, where you can use React Router in other frameworks now, and React Router is Remix now, and it's kind of interesting. But
maybe have any of you tried it with Svelte? Is it possible? Like I haven't even.
That's what Austin's talk was at Svelte Summit. So he created the Svelte.
It's vmix.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But like if Remix is right, I'm just saying I haven't tried it yet.
I did try Svmix, and it was only client-side rendered when I tried it. So I didn't end up using it because it didn't have like the full capabilities of SvelteKit or Remix, because Remix is fully server-side rendered. That's the only option you have in it. So
I think Svmix is actually a separate project. That's
his name of his talk was like, it was like different names that he could possibly name this thing, and it's like Svelte and Remix bunched together.
yeah. So, but Svmix is actually a project someone made to do that.
Really?
Rebuild Remix, but using SvelteKit, I think. So they are different.
I haven't seen this one. Svmix.com. Seriously, the full stack addition to SvelteKit.
Yeah.
What? Okay. Interesting.
Seems to be updated 5 months ago.
I'll have to look.
Yeah, so
5 months ago. That seems like a long time in open source world.
Yeah, it's before the routing changes, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Your opinion was that
my opinion is just that I don't think that they will go. I think that actually them working with Hydrogen will bring more of the Remix stuff to Hydrogen, not the other way around.
Right. Yep. Makes sense.
And I guess that it could be because they're trying to do this use the platform thing and do more web standards, but web components, just the API in general is awful to work with. It's hard. And I don't think
do they have server-side rendering?
Remix is only server-side rendered.
Okay, well that's interesting, because that, to me, I use web components quite a bit, and that's one thing I like about Svelte is you can just compile them to web components and they work pretty well. But like no server-side rendering, that's kind of the big sticking point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's isn't that like one of the biggest downsides, that it's not easy to server-side render?
Yeah.
Maybe it is. Maybe there's a framework out there that does it.
I know there's a few, but I haven't really tried them.
Lit is one of them.
Yeah, but I feel like Lit is probably more of a way to write web components, but it's I think the meta framework needs to be built in a way to handle server-side rendering of web components.
Yeah. Yeah, the only way right now is like some kind of offline rendering, offline DOM, which is obviously not great.
Oh, I see. Right. Well, cool. Web components. Exciting topic.
I mean, I will say that's one thing I really like about Svelte is like here at Ashley, like we're kind of trapped is like we have all these like global styles that are like infecting everything, and we need to find some way where we could get Svelte on the page without it affecting everything else. And Svelte's been awesome at that. You can just turn on the web component compiler and it just works. So you can put it in there. And then what I love about Svelte being a compiler is like once you're done with that, or if you have another project where you want to use those components, you can use them, and you basically effectively have one component that kind of works everywhere.
Yep.
That's awesome. You might be the biggest user of the web components thing. Because I know that Rich doesn't actually use it very much.
I mean, it's like, I think it's one of like my strong points on Svelte is like it works anywhere JS works, right? Like other components, you need to load a huge library, and that like will only work, like if you have that library loaded, or it's like Node.js. Like, I love that about Svelte is like you get this self-contained little package, and you can be like, oh, I have a weird use case because I'm converting a huge site over. Could I compile it to web components? Like, sure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Anthony.
All right, last opinion.
Last opinion,
Anthony?
I guess I'll make this one quick, but effectively, I think Elon Musk was right for one of the first times in his life. He said that bookmarks in Twitter are really badly implemented. And I agree, because I use them quite a lot. People post interesting stuff on Twitter and I bookmark it, and I just never look at it again because it's so hidden away. Even the way to share it, I forgot the first few times I started using it, because you kind of share it and then you click bookmark and it's kind of hidden under an icon. And I found the same thing on Reddit because I didn't even realize it had like a save thing. I clicked save and I couldn't find it for ages afterwards. I had to Google how to find the bookmarks thing on Reddit. Whereas actually, the front page is wonderful, but what I want to see is a list of things that I've seen before and gone, yeah, that's really good. I want to go back and read those, and it should be really prominent and right there. It's actually buried under profile under a tab. So I think the bookmarks are wonderful. Twitter and Reddit being examples, but I'm sure there's more. Pocket is what I've used before. Pocket was quite good at that kind of stuff, and that was quite accessible. But they're just really badly implemented everywhere, and I think that it's a really useful feature. It should like your own curated feed of things that are guaranteed to be interesting to you.
YouTube, a watch later playlist that I use quite a bit. And in the recent redesign, they de-emphasized it so that I had trouble finding it. And I think this is somewhat on purpose. So the dystopian reason for making bookmarks intentionally bad is because no one actually uses it. You use it because you're abnormal. Most people, it's a wish list that people never get to, right? It's what you want to be rather than what you actually are. And YouTube being YouTube, any of these social media companies, they want to feed you what you actually end up watching instead of what you want to watch.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, they want to direct you in a certain direction rather than where you want to go.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was laughing there while you were talking when you said that you couldn't find the bookmarks on Reddit. And it's just like that's ridiculous that it's that hard to find the bookmarks. But yeah, if they intentionally hide it, of course.
The whole Reddit UI is very confusing for me, especially being an Android user. There's lots of different apps that you can download for it. And so each app looks different. And depending on which one you're using, it is so confusing. I barely use Reddit because the app is not standard.
Yeah, I would recommend
using...
So
first you got to get iPhone.
Yeah.
No.
Get an iPhone and then get Apollo, which is the best Reddit app.
but it's like the official Reddit app.
If you say first I have to buy an Apple product, then I'm done. I'm out.
Well, so you can still use Reddit.
Use a third-party app.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Yeah. Why does Reddit not have a good standard app for both operating systems?
Yeah.
They don't have a good app and they don't have a good website. Like the Reddit is broken,
I think the old Reddit website, it's still fine. So if you replace www with old, you get this old interface that's actually usable and fast and doesn't lag out your computer.
Why?
Why
am I doing that? Why am I not using the de facto?
I wouldn't know. It's very, very odd. Like I have no idea what's going on at Reddit. I'd love to talk to someone.
This is ugly.
Maybe we could.
I just opened it.
Yeah, but it is, but it's very functional and practical. Like it's not full of like fluff and all of this other stuff that's on the new interface.
It reminds me a little bit of Hacker News. Like it's just old.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
When I first discovered Reddit, I was quite an avid Dig user, and Dig had a great interface, and I thought Dig was really slick and neat. And they changed it into some. Well, it kind of lost popularity because Reddit was taking popularity. And I looked at Reddit and thought, well, this looks rubbish, so it must be rubbish. And I didn't use it for ages. And then I eventually kind of realized it. And I was like, okay, this interface is rubbish, but it's quite nice to use. But the problem is then it's like Dig disappeared and became some kind of nonsense that no one uses. And I was stuck with Reddit. And I was like, okay, well, this is pretty good because I can use it. And then they did their redesign. And then, though you can access the old one, I was like, this is going in the wrong direction. They've now made this really bad. And I can't use it. So... I use Reddit less and less as a result now.
All right. I think that's all of our unpopular opinions. I don't have one. Sean, you don't have one either? Nope. All right. Picks then. I can go first. I have 2 picks. One is Svelte French Toast. It sounds as exciting as it is. It's a super small toast library.
Oh.
For notifications and stuff. And it supports promises, custom styling, and all sorts of fun stuff. It's great.
I thought this was like a local breakfast shop you had.
Yeah, that's called Svelte French toast.
Yeah, I mean, svelte is a word that's used in English language.
Yeah, it's just like the problem is that here in Sweden, like the way you pronounce svelte means pretty much famine. So it's it wouldn't work.
Interesting. Yeah, that does not work.
Yeah. But yeah, Svelte French toast. It's great. It's super easy. Like
I have a pretty good pick. It's actually a video game, if I can pick it for you. So this will kind of explain a lot of my visual style because it's one of my biggest inspirations. If you haven't played the game Hypno Space Outlaw and you're a web developer, you got to play it now. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but basically the plot is you're a moderator on the 90s internet. And it's like an interactive like story where you're like browsing through these old like crappy web pages, and it's so much fun. Like you have to like ban people and stuff like that, and then people will make like pages reacting to your ban, like calling you out. It's so cool, and like I highly encourage everyone who's a web dev to play it. It is such an awesome game, and it's sick.
Do you get like a
That is a great rec.
Yeah.
do you get an extra like good understanding of what it takes to be a moderator online?
Oh yeah,
Playing this, yeah.
It's so fun. Like the first quest is my favorite because you're like, it's like, oh, people are using this copyright character Guptail Gooper, right? And you need to ban the people using them. And so you go to like a kindergartner teacher's website, and she has like pictures her kids drew of them, and you just go like, you're like, I wonder if I can, and then you hit ban on it. It's like banned. And then like it goes to the next day and she's like, this moderator banned me from my kindergarten pictures. Like it's such like a delight. It's so fun to play, and it's so cool. There's like, what I love about it is like you'll find like hidden pages with like really cool stuff on it. It's such a cool game. I highly recommend everyone play it.
I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah, it looks really good on Steam.
Yep. Yeah.
Am I next? Okay.
Yep.
I'll do a quick one. Every year I do a podcast roundup and listen to a fair amount of podcasts. I've done it for 3 years, and this 2022 was my 4th year. So I put it in there if you want my recommendations. I picked a bunch of picks.
Yeah. So any particular ones that you
probably like, I mean, the biggest podcast that kind of appeared in this scene last year was the Founders Podcast by David Senra, basically reading a bunch of biographies by famous founders and then picking through lessons from them. I think there are a lot of people who study success, but not as well as he does, and not as enthusiastically storytelling. And I think it helps because I would never read those biographies on my own, but this guy basically just goes through and he's extremely passionate about biographies. So yeah, why not?
Such an interesting
I like kind of learning from yeah. And he blew up like a lot recently. So I think he's he went from like a complete, like no one ever heard of him to one of the biggest podcasts in the US last year.
Oh, wow.
For those more technical minded, you might like the Invent Like an Owner podcast, where it is an oral history of the early days of Amazon by the people who were there. So they have interviews with the people who created the Amazon recommendation system. They have interviews with people who created Amazon catalog, like how do you expand from books to DVDs to everything else. So yeah, I just really enjoy these kinds of stories.
Brittany?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about mine already, but UI.dev has a newsletter that they send out. I think it's weekly. It's called Bytes, BYTES newsletter, and I always enjoy reading it. It's got fun memes and graphics in there, and usually has relevant information, and they just did their 2023 picks, but I really enjoy reading that one. And going off of Bert's pick about like gaming things that are like good for programmers, this little game called Danger Crew that was actually built with React, I believe, which is interesting. But it's a retro style RPG, and programmers, like kind of like Pokemon, you battle each other with your laptops, and so it's programmer styled like adventure game. It's really cool.
That's so cool. I'm definitely gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it out as well. It looks familiar. It looks like I used to use a tool called Habit RPG, has the same kind of pixel art style. Habit RPG was basically just like a way to make you get better at doing habits, but
I
just
think
like
I've used that
gamifying
before
it.
too. And the game is like $5 right now. I think it's $10 normally, but it's 50% off right now, so pretty cheap.
Nice. All right.
Wow.
Anthony?
Yeah. Okay. So, in America in the 90s or something, when the GI Joe cartoons were around, the GI Joe series was around on TV, animated drawn series, I think it was. Obviously, I'm not an American, not from America, and I never saw this on TV, but I'm aware of it because of the PSAs that were made. So they used kind of the GI Joe characters to make these public service announcements, little short clips, a few seconds long, about, don't walk off with strangers and don't play in the road and all that kind of stuff, so that kids would learn not to do silly stuff, right? And then someone, of course, because it's the internet, went and redubbed those with really, really weird, bizarre stuff. And they were hilarious. When I was probably late teen, I found it hilarious and it cracked me up. And there's one particular one called I'm a Computer, where the guy, for some bizarre reason, declares that he's a computer and starts talking to people saying stop all the downloading, all this kind of weird stuff, and it was just hilarious. But
hey kid, I'm a computer.
That's exactly it. That's a pretty good impression as well, in fact. So you should watch these. But my brother, in all his wisdom, managed to find this, which you can't see, so I have to describe it. But they actually made real GI Joe models of the characters from these PSAs.
God. That's awesome.
Which is super cool. I'm not sure whether I should keep it in the box or get it out or whatever. There's light's not good here. But yeah, it's so cool. It's got the dog and everything.
I'm literally going to order that tonight. That's my favorite video on YouTube.
That's very random.
The camera's not good. It says, and knowing is half the battle. So this is the Mutt one, but there's obviously a bunch of other ones in this collection, so these are awesome. So I got this as a Christmas present. I think it's great. I think, I'm not really an action figure kind of guy, but these are worth having for sure. And that's my pick.
Nice. I have another pick. So one last one. It's Nostr. It's an alternative to Twitter and Telegram and all sorts of stuff. It's actually a protocol for decentralizing communications, basically. So it stands for Notes and Other Stuff Transmitted by Relays. So we've talked a bit about Mastodon lately, and this is another competitor, I guess you would say. And it's very simple. You just create a key pair, like a private public key pair, and your private key is what you use to post stuff, and your public key is what people use to follow you, basically. Very, very easy. Very nice. Can recommend it.
I did sign up. Also, I didn't fully understand it.
Yeah, so you don't sign up anywhere. You just create a key pair and you use an application. That's it.
What kind of application? How do you follow people and read their stuff? Yeah,
so There you can connect to a bunch of relays that will relay messages to other users, but you can basically make any kind of application. People have made Telegram clones or Twitter clones, and
is all of that aggregated anywhere, or you're just responsible for aggregating it?
So the way it works is, I think it's ephemeral to a point. So messages won't be stored forever, for example. Depends on the relay. So the relay you connect to decides how much they want to save and what messages they want to relay. It's a very interesting and nice idea, and it's much simpler than Mastodon, in my opinion. But yeah, and it, for some reason, Jack from Jack Dorsey got into it, so it got a huge upswing. And then Elon Musk Twitter tweeted something about other social media platforms being banned, and Nostr was on there for some reason.
Yeah.
It has 2,000 users or something. I don't know. It's tiny. So I don't know. It's a cool protocol.
It's the best advertising ever for that for Twitter to tweet about don't mention these competitors by just mentioning them all. I think Jack Dorsey said something like Nostr is the only viable competitor to Twitter or something like that. That's what he was saying.
And he's actually, I'm following him on there, and he's actually very active. Like he posts a lot, and he replies to like random people and stuff. So, and he said on there, it feels like Twitter in the early days. I was on Twitter in the early days. I don't know what that means, but that sounds good, I guess.
Well, they're like regular days, but like early.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, so that's everything, I think. Thank you for joining us, Bert.
Dude, thank you so much for having me, guys. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
I want everyone who listens to the podcast to know that these guys are as cool in real life as they sound on the show.
And so are you. So
Thank you.
yeah, hopefully we can all see each other next year. This year.
That'd be awesome.
It's a new year. So this year at some point at Svelte Summit. In the
I
fall.
look forward to it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. And with that, I think we are done for the day. We'll see you all next week. And yeah, same bad time, same bad. Same bat time, same bat. I don't remember the saying. Anyway, goodbye, everyone.
Later.
Bye.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, it's Kavir. If you like the show, please drop a review on your favorite podcast player. It would help out a lot. Thanks.